Hello F11 members and welcome to the fundamentals of post-production video tutorials for issue 61, February 2017. On the screen in front of me I have the results of a shoot from a week or so back, just after New Year's here in Dorset. A beautiful frosty morning overlooking the Piddle Valley. You can read about that shoot, how it all came together, in this month's How It's Done Being There feature. But let's now work through the processing on this image, which is relatively simple and yet requires a fair bit of subtlety to really record, to really get the best out of the picture. As with always in these video tutorials, it's not so much how we do things, it's why we do them. Now, what we've got here, looking at the image in the develop module, we can see that I'm clipping some highlights here. If I hover my cursor over the highlight icon in the histogram, there are those tortured highlights that I've lost due to my exposure. Now, I'm not too concerned with that because the adjacent frame here was exposed to capture that tone in the sky. So what I'm going to do is process this image here the best I can, ignoring the sky, and merge it with this frame here, which keeps that detail in the sky. Now, the light was quite soft. I waited until the first light, the first sunlight on the scene is just picking up here on the field here, on this tree here, bottom right, and in the field at the bottom there as well. In the distance, it's all very hazy and washed out. And of course I could, if I wanted, try and do something about that in post-production. And yet, I do not want to lose the sort of soft watercolorish feel to the picture. So let's work through the decisions that I made on this picture. And as usual, I'm going to start by adjusting my black and my white points. Let's start with the whites, and I'm going to ignore those highlights there in the top, in the sky. I'm just going to process the image for the landscape. So holding down the Alt key and moving the white slider to the right, I can see more clippings taking place in the sky. But I can go a fair way before I start to see clipping happening in the landscape below, up to about plus 45 on my whites there. And I'm going to do the same with the blacks. I'm going to hold down the Alt slider, move my blacks to the slider to the left until I see where that yellow starts to appear. I'm clipping my blacks. Move that black slider back to about minus 33. And up here that's indicating as well that I have no clipped blacks. Now, you know, this is always a subjective call, and I'm going to go just a bit further on my blacks because I don't think there's really any harm in the odd pure black in an image. So that's gone some way towards brightening up the foreground, but it's still much too dark and dingy, quite frankly. So I'm going to come down here to my point curve, and I'm going to brighten up the image by just pushing the point curve up to the top left. And I'm now going to grab the bottom of that point curve and pull it back to about where it started. So you see what I'm doing is putting in an S shape into this tone curve, which is giving the image contrast. It's also, so I've brightened the image and put some contrast in there. And that's gone a fair way towards improving, to getting where I want to be with the landscape part of the image. Let's just turn off those highlights for now. What I want to do is also just look at the vibrance of the picture. I'm going to add just a touch. I've added contrast, so too much vibrance here will very quickly result in the images looking sickly. So about plus 10 is going to work for me, I think, plus 12. Normally, I would very, very rarely use clarity for my colour images, but I think in this case, just a touch of clarity may help. Again, about +10 on the clarity there. I'm going to sharpen the image. I'm going to adjust my sharpening masking here. Hold down the Alt slider, move my masking to the right just so the black affects the sky. About +10. Always seems to be about that kind of value. And what I want to do, still ignoring the sky, but I do want to darken down the sort of top third of the image. And to do that, I'm going to use my grad tool. And what I do here now is hold down my shift key and then move the grad down. Now by doing that, it ensures, holding the shift key ensures that the grad comes in absolutely level. It's not always a case of wanting an absolutely level grad. It can be any angle we want. But as I have a very level horizon in this picture, I think there's a certain logic to that. And I'm going to go for a very soft transition on my grad from here up to here. I'm going to adjust my highlights there, pull back highlights to about -20, and exposure, just to darken down this area of the image there, to about -30 there, and just I can fine tune where the positioning of my grad, of course, now. And okay, I think that's pretty good, so go with that. Click on done. Now if I look at my start and my end point there, you can see how we've transformed the image already, radically for the better, of course. But I need to deal with the sky. So what I'm going to do is now export this image and export this image, which was exposed for the sky, and open them up in Photoshop and merge the two together. So I'll see you in Photoshop in just a second. So here we have the two images. This is the one I've just worked on, the landscape image, and this is the sky image here. So what I'm going to do is now just select all of that image, and I can do that by action that I've got here. It selects all of it, cuts it, and closes the image because I'm going to do that now. Select, cut, and close. And now I'm going to paste that image on top of this one here. So Command V pastes that image on top. And now if I bring my layer palette in here, you will see there's my layer palette, and what I have is the top dark image on top of the light image. Click on this eye icon and it hides the layer, that dark top layer. So what I want to do now is apply a layer mask so that the only bit of this top dark layer that I can see, it will be the sky and maybe just a bit of that landscape there. So the way I'm going to do that is, let's bring my tools in here. I'm going to use the lasso tool here, and I'm going to select very roughly the area, this top area of the image. Don't need to be too precise because I'm going to feather it over a really wide radius there. Now I'm going to go up here to Layer Mask. Sorry, before I do that, I'm going to go up here to Select and Modify and Feather. So this is feathering the radius of my selection, and I'm going to put a really wide feather radius on there of 500 pixels. Now the effect of that is almost like a very soft grad filter, and that's exactly the effect that I want. Okay, and now I go Layer, Layer Mask, and Reveal Select. Click on Reveal Selection. Now, what we have in front of me now is the dark layer with a mask applied, only showing that top bit that I wanted, the sky. If I click on and off, you can see the effect of that there. I think that's worked really well. I would say maybe this top area here is darkened down just a touch, so I'm just going to refine that edge of that mask there by using my paintbrush tool here. Now if I come here and click on paint there, and now I can, if you can see the size of that brush there, I can alter that using my square brackets key. I want quite a big brush here, and what I want to do is actually apply more of that mask. So I want to paint in black to add a bit of that black to this mask here. So if I come down here, you can see these two icons here telling me what I'm painting in, black or white. If I hit the X key on my keyboard, switches that to black. Come up here to opacity, 8%, very, very moderate. It's better to build up your painting with repeated strokes rather than trying to do it all in one go. I want even bigger brush here, and now I'm just going to very easily one stroke across like that, just to brighten up that area of the top of the landscape where the mask is being applied just a bit too heavily. 3 passes of my brush resulted in the feel that I want, and now I'm looking at an image that I'm very pleased with, I have to say. I think it's got a lovely feel, quite a soft feel. We have the ability with tools such as the dehazer tool in Lightroom to take out that kind of receding distance haze, but it's all part of the image. It looks wrong if you start trying to correct too much of it. And as always with this post-production game, it's a case of, if in doubt, do nothing. And looking at that image now, I think it's got a lovely subtle feel to it, and it looks believable. So I'm going to stop there. So there you go. That's part 1 of this month's video tutorials on post-production. Join me in part 2, where I take in an image shot, again just recently on the Jurassic Coast, and work you through what I do to it. See you there.